Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. So,
good morning from Abuja. I'm Maokbe Ogun Yusuf. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Well, this is Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Yes, it's a beautiful Thursday morning. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
yes, indeed. So it's going to be well, we don't know if it's going to be a challenge as of yet. We know that the NLC did issue some notice to the CBN how they plan to picket CBN offices across the country. And that's as a result of the cash situation. Who would have thought that we'll be talking about all of this at this point in time? Well, it turns out, which we'll also focus as we go through some of the dailies here today, the CBN, while lots of people kept on talking about how they can't access this cash, even though they've tried several times, the scarcity of it, both the old and the new ones. I think when the CBN spoke about the challenge that they were also facing, but I think one thing that stands out here, much as the CBN says, yes, the banks will get some of those notes today, what is going to be done about the platform, this infrastructure, the cashless policy, the supporting infrastructure to ensure that these challenges, because this is not the first time, it wasn't just recently introduced, this cashless policy of the CBN. It's been there for years. And for the fact that, yeah, even though they said that the banks or the CBN should have notified the banks before they came up with the policy of theirs, but then you also will think, but wait a minute, we thought that there was this plan a long time ago to ensure that when the country goes cashless, that they will provide for all of this. So I'm looking to see what happens, whether or not there will still be a need for the NLC to picket their offices if today or tomorrow the banks get a load of cash from the CBN. Is the quality going to improve across different parts of the country? Will people be able to access these notes seamlessly, as it were? And then all of those failed bank transactions, what is being done? Do the banks even get sanctioned by the CBN? Because how is it that you transfer funds and it takes 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours, in some cases 72 hours, before the other party gets to receive all of this? So it causes a lot of hitch. But who bears the brunt at the end of the day? The end user, like myself. Can we allow these things go on like this? It's a statement of fact.
You didn't say that, Chamberlain.
We suffer these things, don't we? Maybe your bank, you're having a smooth ride. Maybe you're having a smooth ride, but yours truly isn't. And I know I see a couple of emails, some of them say, look, this is nightmarish for lots of them, but who knows? Maybe we're about to heave a sigh of relief. Who knows?
I'm not trying to take anything away from the seriousness of what it is that is at hand. But just before I move on, I'd just like to say that, Bukola, I did note and notice your name change. So Bukola Koka, you're welcome to this program. Whatever it is that's made you change your name, just know that you have our support and that, we're totally with you on, on whatever it is, because sometimes, people just want to change their names and that's fine. So to the issue at hand, this is what it is. We're still where we are. This was supposed to be initially for all the people who were speculating about whether this was political or it was about the politics, it was to reduce vote buying. We understand that vote buying still happened during the elections. We understand that there were transfers made. We understand that people were arrested. And it will be very interesting to follow up on the arrests that were made. At least 2 of them we're aware of. A lawmaker who was arrested in Rivers State with over $500,000. Wow. That story is still there. We do not know what the follow-up to it is. We also understand that the EFCC arrested somebody in Lagos with over 30 million naira cash in new notes. We saw, even though that person wasn't arrested, that's an example that has been pointed out in videos. That video made around on social media. Examples have been made countless of times on this program that video made the round, that policemen were right behind that person who was a commissioner, we understand, who was distributing cash to people in a line around the polling unit. So these are things that we witnessed in the election. So vote buying, we understand, was still, even though those are the ones that they caught. We don't know the ones that they didn't catch. So we from the ones that they caught, either on camera or the law enforcement agencies caught, we can deduce that this possibly was a little more widespread than what we saw. That aside, so people were hoping that after the elections, if this was to prevent and prohibit vote buying and also for the CBN to have control over monetary policy, the problem still persists. The cash is still not flowing. People are still having a Herculean task making their way into the banks. I personally have not gone to any bank. I do not have cash as I speak with you. Perhaps I have max 2,000 naira yesterday. I nearly got in trouble with a taxi driver because I offered to pay him via a bank transfer. And he kept on saying, Madam, I know get account number. I had to say, well, you will find somebody. You will have to find somebody through whom we can do this transfer. Otherwise, at least you're dropping me at my house. You know my house. It means I'll owe you until whenever it is I can get cash to pay you. You know, but thankfully we're able to, you know, reach a truce, and eventually I was able to do a transfer. It is still a problem. On a good day, it would have just been go to an ATM, get some cash, and pay him, and you can move on. If the person is willing to take a transfer, you do the transfer. At this point, much as a lot of banks haven't yet stepped up to the plate. I know that yesterday I said we must call out a bank, and I did mention the name of a bank here. There's been no response so far. But I think it's also worth commending the banks that are doing their best to step up, to realize that this is an opportunity for them to, you know, I don't want to say cash in, but anything that presents a problem or a challenge to people is an opportunity for people to, you know, step up to the plate, solve problems, and make profit. So for the banks that are solving the problems and making sure that people are still able to carry out their transactions, and I bank with a number of those kinds of banks, thankfully, maybe that's why I haven't suffered too much. Or imagine me trying to transfer money to the taxi driver and it's not going through. That would have been really frustrating. Thank you to the banks that are making this seamless. And some of them are even microfinance banks. Some of them have really, really stepped up to the plate. I don't know whether they will still qualify as microfinance bank when they see how much capitalization they have afterwards. But really, this problem is something that we can't talk about it in whispers anymore. I'm hoping that the CBN will let us know what exactly the challenges are. We understand that the CBN governor has met with bankers and has also said that they're going to be giving them lots of notes so that the NLC doesn't picket or doesn't go on a protest. And they're going to be giving them old notes. The question is, for how long? Because we know that this is going to be to the end of December. What we're hoping is that the more people take their old notes to the bank, that new notes will come out. And that's how and that more people would get on the platforms, and that these platforms will be expanded. So the question is, where are we precisely? I know that we're still in the aftermath of the election haze. This is March. We're going into April. When will we get that briefing? When will we get that question and answer session to understand precisely what is the way forward? I don't think the idea is that people are kicking against cashless. The idea is both of them should go hand in hand, you know, that we should be able to transact on the platforms, on the e-platforms if we want to. And if you need cash, it should be available seamlessly. After all, it is your money, isn't it? I beg your pardon, Kayode Abuki.
Well, it is my money. It is our money. And for a lot of Nigerians, yes, it is their money. And, you know, first about the lawmaker you talked about then. Apparently, the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt on Wednesday granted a 100 million naira bill to that member of House of Representatives, Dr. Chinyere Igwe. And well, some of the conditions include him to submit his passport to the Nigerian Immigration Service, adding that he must never travel out of the country till the conclusion of his trial, and it was adjourned up until May the 4th. So that's the update for a lot of people who've been following that story from the moment he was arrested with $498,000 in cash. Yeah, so cash. And it's ironic that you can find that much foreign currency in cash in Nigeria, And, you know, a lot of people are still struggling to get access to 500 naira, 1,000 naira. Markwe, with that 2,000 naira, believe me, you, believe you, me, I envy you. Because I do not have, I don't say shingbai, you know that expression. I do not have any cash for me. I mean, it has affected the tipping culture. I mean, I think we can, at the end of the day, sit back and just count the costs of this whole process, really. Because we were trying to tame inflation, but guess what? The MPC had to raise the interest rates by 50 basis points from 7.5 to 18%. So again, trying to tighten you know, the inflation rate to some extent. So clearly, we're battling this on different platforms. And I remember that, I think it was last week or some weeks ago, that a report came out that online or electronic transactions actually dropped by a percentage, I think, in February. So yes, a lot of people seem to be doing a lot of the electronic transactions, but a lot of people have been hurt. They've been burnt in the process. So they are holding back right now. So that's why a lot of people, rather than tell you to transfer, they just tell you, I don't have a bank account. At least you're not offered to transfer to me because I do not want the headache. A lot of transactions you make days before, people get it, you know, days after. So it's a lot of challenge. Well, I'm glad the CBN governor spoke to that and said that, well, they're trying to improve on that. In his words, he said that they will need to reassess to know whether the currency in circulation has attained an optimal level so as to put in place measures to ensure that we don't go back to where we have been before. So 1 trillion naira in circulation, clearly it's either not getting round as it ought to get round, or it is not enough. So we'll keep raising these issues. After all, as Mark said, it is your money, it is my money. Bukola.
Yes, Kadi, 1 trillion naira in circulation as against what was withdrawn. That was about 2 point
Over
something
2 trillion naira.
Trillion naira. Yeah. And I recall that we asked, you know, the economist and former Minister of Finance on this program, Sunrise Daily, some months back, and he said, you know, what is supposed to be returned to circulation should be as close as possible to what was withdrawn from circulation. So we have that challenge of, you know, inadequate currency in circulation. You know, and just to pick up on some of the first things that Marquez said, you know, the cashless policy, Naira redesign was supposed to curb vote buying, but we find that, you know, it still didn't curb vote buying as it went on a minimal scale, however minimal, during the presidential election and the state elections. We recall the EFCC, even before the, you know, general elections on a large scale, arrested certain people involved in vote buying in Ekiti State. Where did that arrest lead? You know, the arrest of the lawmaker, the arrest of some people in Zamfara State, and indeed the FCC also said it made arrests of someone in possession of 32, is it million naira or $1 million? So
I think it was naira.
Naira.
That's the one Mark referred
that was,
to.
you know, meant for vote buying in Lagos. So where will these prosecutions lead? I'm afraid I'm not as optimistic, you know, as anyone would expect me to be optimistic about prosecution in that regard. And that brings us to the concern of the lack of a culture of deterrence in the country. And that's why impunity reigns. Someone also needs to provide an explanation to Nigerians about the bags and bags of destroyed cash that have been found in certain locations. Some of them are 500 naira notes, some of them 1,000 naira notes. And you could see people picking up on the notes, you know, the cash destroyed. You know, the Naira redesign policy is supposed to, you know, create inclusion in the economy. But we find that, you know, it's running to the contrary. In most places, perhaps, especially in far-flung areas, you find that the people at the lowest rung of the ladder, they're the most affected. And Kayode, I recall in one of our reports, you know, that woman, you know, whenever I remember her, it really breaks my heart what she could be going through. It was a report produced from Abuja. She says she doesn't have a bank account, and when people come to the market, nobody would want to purchase anything from her because she doesn't have a bank account and she can't accept transfers. You know, so what is that woman going through right now? Absolutely. If you have only 1,000 naira with you, Marquez says she has just about 3,000 naira.
I actually don't have any with me.
I have 3,000 naira.
Oh, wow.
And just as I wrap
You're
up,
a millionaire
I'd
right
like
now.
to say thank you to my colleague, you know, Bola Fraser, who always bails me out, you know, with cash whenever I need it. I don't know how I'd have coped without Bola so far. So, we need some form of, close-up. We need to be up and close with the issues. The CBN needs to brief Nigerians on what exactly is happening and when we're going to get a reprieve from the cash crunch. Malkwe Chimele.
Well, yes, indeed. So we'll delve right into the dailies. I think they have a perspective on some of what we just highlighted. The Daily Trust, for instance, talks about CBN releases, in parentheses, mopped up old notes to banks today. So what impact will that make? How much of that will happen? So if you look at that front page, as NLC threatens mass action, despite 1 trillion naira in circulation, cash crunch persists. Rush for Ramadan shopping amidst naira scarcity, price hike. So, I mean, guys, you did highlight some of the reasons why the CBN came up with this policy in the first place. So, this redesign was part of which they told us to address the issue of individuals who make currency fraud their main source of income, people who have hidden the money or stolen the money. They say, for instance, will either find their way to change it by taking the money out or will need it given to change the value. So what did that happen? What about the currency change, which they say aims to give a fatal blow to growing kidnapping and ransom industry, also to ensure lowering the rate of inflation, to ensure they control the amount of money in circulation, and probably, don't forget that part, getting the unbanked banks. So I don't know if they've done an analysis where they were, what kind of successes did we record, the gains. Because one thing they did expose was the lack of capacity of the financial sector to handle this policy, this cashless policy of the CBN. And what is going to be done about that? So again, they keep asking, all of those who suffered loss or the other, can they ever be compensated? In an ideal world, I think that should have been the case, but who knows? That's Daily Trust this morning.
Well, take a look at leadership newspapers. They're focusing heavily on politics. Look at the lead story there. In 20 years, Peter Obi alters shape of Southeast politics. That's the lead story right there. You see the picture represented in infographics, detailing for you from 1999 to 2023 how the face of Southeast politics has changed, especially now with Mr. Alex Otti winning the governorship elections in Abia State. You see there a blue map added to it. So a very colorful region. It was same of the PDP, APC, ABGA, Labour Party, but there's no more PPA. Looks like PPA has gone extinct now, at least from that place.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, PPA had a state in 2007. But that is no longer the case. So you might want to take a look at the front page and look at this. LP records first win in Abia governorship election. PDP slim win in Enugu takes party closer to extinction. So the details are on page 4 of the paper for you. Of course, they also have an explainer for you right at the bottom there. A number of other stories just right on the corner there. On top of the nameplate, Sultan declares today, first day of Ramadan. So for those who are Muslim brothers and sisters who will be fasting in this season, may the blessings of the season be with them. Look at this. Banks to get more old Naira notes from CBN today. That's also there. Tinubu off to Paris, Saudi Arabia for vacation, Umrah. Abba Kyari loses bid to stop trial for drug offenses, page 12. And global banking turmoil. Nigerian banks need vigilance, proactiveness. That's according to Agora policy. Page 7 is where we'll find details. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
We'll take a look at the Guardian newspaper with this one. It's on the 2023 elections. It may have come, but it hasn't gone yet, clearly. Atiku to tribunal, declare me winner or order rerun. So, I mean, we get in deep dive into the details of the petitions. You see some of the stories making rounds. LP's OT, PDP's Mba, win Abia Enugu polls. INEC to conduct rerun in 69 polling units. That's for Adamawa. Don't swear in Tinubu, Shatima. Dati cautions. It was quite an interesting interview yesterday on PoliticsToday. You can catch it, really, eventually on our YouTube page. But that's how the political scene looks like this morning. Things are clearly seem to be getting heated. Just on top of that big story, Ramadan fasting begins today. So indeed, from all of us here, we wish Muslim brothers and sisters the very best during this period. Healing can't happen without justice, Road Survivor replies Tinubu. Yeah, that's also on the front page, as well as some other stories that you find there. Scientists link hormonal contraceptives with breast cancer. It's very important to pay attention to that as well. Let's have it for the Guardian newspaper.
And flip to the Nigerian News Direct, and of course, Gadi, you just mentioned earlier that the elections have come, but have certainly not gone. If you consider this big story, 2023 general elections, cyber attacks on INEC technology hit 16.8 million naira. Riders go this way, records 3.8 million cyber attacks during Guba House of Assembly polls as INEC concludes review of Guba results. Well, it's cheery to note that the attacks didn't succeed.
I'm sorry, 16.8 million.
That's...
I mean, that's... Really? 16.8 million?
And I wonder how much of this, affects Nigeria's sovereignty as a country. What's the reason, the explanation for this quantum of interest
that figure,
in our elections?
Yeah, that figure alone raises lots of questions. 16 points. Do you mean visits? Do you mean hits?
Attacks. These are not visits.
No, not you, actually. I'm just saying that story. Does it mean visits? Does it mean hits, like just how much activity? 16.8 million attacks. I mean, I can't wrap my head around it. And I think that's been said time and again.
By people who are well-meaning.
Well, we need to first probe that number, that figure. Really.
That figure.
Yeah.
Okay, to form part of what INEC should be talking to Nigerians about when it gets the time to do so. Take a look at stories above the nameplate. LPN's PDP ruling chain in Abia as OT wins Guba poll. Of course, that brought a sense of relief to voters, and they aggrieved when the results were announced yesterday. Enugu is up next. Let's look at this next one on this Osun, understanding the issues before the appeal court. Just in case you're interested in that, you want to know exactly what's happening with that story, you find it on page, I believe, you'll find it inside the Nigerian News Direct this morning. I can't quite figure out the number. Just a few more stories before we exit News Direct. Naira scarcity, NLC to picket CBN offices nationwide. Also, as Buhari to resolve tussle over Obalindi prayer ground in 2 weeks. That's interesting. That's an old, very old praying ground. Because I grew up partly in Obalindi.
Oh, I see.
Lagos.
I see.
Let's leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct.
All right, take a look at New Telegraph. Polls. UK moves against politicians undermining democracy in Nigeria. Compiles names of culprits for visa ban. Oh, so it appears they're taking a cue from their US counterparts. Well, I thought there was a statement from UK rep here saying that Nigerians should be proud of the elections. So is it a mixed signal or what? So what are we missing? So, but this is a big lead right here. This is what they plan to do. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. So there you go.
So when you hear some politicians haven't gone to the UK or the US in a while, you know perhaps why they haven't.
Yeah, there's word that even some judges who gave some judgments too were restricted. They couldn't even...
yeah, they couldn't go for a conference.
Yeah, so they had to wield that big stick. So if that will help some of the others shape up, maybe shape out, who knows, because there's a huge responsibility on ensuring that things go right. All right, so there you go. And then, speaking about politics, APC suspends SGF boss Mustafa indefinitely. You may ask why? For losing polling units to PDP.
Are you for real?
Politics, yes, interesting.
What was he supposed to do? Force the voters to vote his party?
Oh dear.
Come on.
I thought it was a democracy. So are they supposed to compel people?
Oh, exactly.
To make things
isn't
happen?
it supposed to be, anyway?
And is it an offense in the political party? Is it stipulated that if you don't deliver your polling units,
Exactly.
Then, what about those who lost their states, which is way bigger than than the polling unit? But some others have lost their polling unit too before.
Well, you now see sometimes the kind of things that drives desperation, the kind of humiliation that drives politicians to desperate lengths. Oh, I don't want to be embarrassed or disgraced. I lost my polling unit. I lost my local government or my ward, as the case might be. People making. Look,
what kind of signal is this sending?
It's
a wrong signal.
Maybe
though,
people should read the story. Maybe that should not be. That cannot be. But what do we know? I mean, that's what's on the front page.
Yeah, that's why I just read it the way it is.
Yes, go inside the paper and ensure for yourself what is. Vanguard newspapers here has this on the front page. INEC used third-party device to switch results for Tinubu. That's according to Atiku. Alleges Tinubu's appointee controlled INEC's ICT unit on election day. Alleges third-party device installed. No server failures as claimed by INEC. Full results not uploaded before declaring winner. Tinubu didn't get 1/4 of FCT votes. So these are all of the issues that the candidate of the PDP in the presidential elections is presenting before the courts. So page 5 is where you get details. I do know that I think 2 days ago we saw some of the things that the candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, is asking the court to grant him. And today, or yesterday, we saw this presentation by the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, also before the court. And some of it is what is captured here for you on the front page of Vanguard newspapers. Read page 5 to get details right there.
Looks like the court proceedings will be very dramatic.
Indeed, Chamberlain. Sadly, cameras are not allowed in court. You can only talk. You can only speak after. You can speak to the lawyers after the proceedings. But if anybody is interested in following what is happening in the courts, the person will have to physically go there or rely on the reports that
Shouldn't they change some of these things?
Well,
those days.
There'll be a reason why that is. I know that even the courts where it's allowed, oftentimes you're not allowed to film the judge. So you can only stay on the issues. They have a number of other stories right there. Guba polls jubilation as OT wins in Abia. Mba emerges in Enugu. It's a page 15 read for you. You have the pictures right there at the bottom. Alex Oti wins in Abia. Look at this. Drug trafficking charge. Court declines to stop Abba Kyari's trial. Tinubu not qualified to be sworn in as president, that's according to Dati Ahmed. And the polls will take actions against electoral violence instigators. So that story is also right there for you. A very disturbing story, which must not be swept under the carpet, is concerning security. Terrorists kill 51. That's a lot of people. 51 Zamfara vigilante men abandon corpses in bushes. Well, I guess they're hoping that there'll be some explanation there from the police boss in Zamfara State, Mr. Kolo Yusuf. We'll leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
Well, the Guardian article to Tribunal, okay, well, the same similar thing. But at the bottom strip here, you see, healing can't happen without justice. Rhodes Viper replies Tinubu. So there you go. That ends it with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Well, stick with us. We will be right back.
This election was contested. The candidates received the following votes. Wamba Emeka Michael, Male, Party A, 1,528 valid votes. Ikechi Emenike, male, APC, 24091. Ibe Gregory Ikechukwu Charles, male, Abga, 18119. Oti Alex Chioma, M, LP, 175467. Opai Hero, male, NNPP, 2068 valid votes. Ahiwe Okechukwu Ambrose, male, PDP, 88529 valid votes. Onugu Prince Chibunna, male, ZLP, 1011 valid votes. That Oti Alex Chioma of Labour Party, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
That INEC had suspended a collation of results for Abia and Enugu State on March the 20th. And for a lot of people, especially people in those states who had voted, it was like, you know, it was deferred. But finally yesterday, we got finality to the election in Abia State and also neighboring Enugu State. But let's focus on Abia State for a moment. This morning, we're joined by Dr. Ubani, who is the chairman, Section of Public Interest and Development Law, Spittle of the MBA. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you, Coyote.
You know, a lot of people watching from afar saw what played out, at least on the pages of, you know, on news. They saw on video, on channels, television, and they were following with keen interest, yes, especially because they wanted to see how the map of Nigeria will change, if anything significantly will change from what we've been seeing in the past. But lots of backstory to this one, especially for Abia State. And I know that you, well, I say you're a stakeholder in Abia State. Can you give us the benefit of a backstory, what exactly played out up until what we saw yesterday, for the benefit of those who don't have, you know, that privilege of inside work?
Thank you. To summarize what happened, at the collation center, everything was going on smoothly. With the 16 local government result, there was no issue. And so Alex was leading with a comfortable 95,000 votes or thereabout. Then there is this particular local government that they have always used to manipulate the electoral process in Abia State. So we now keep on hearing that they have cumulative vote of 102 votes. And we are wondering, under these beavers...
Are you talking about Obingwa?
Yeah, Obingwa. And so people started to raise alarm. And the next we heard was that there was an invasion of the INEC office in Obingwa. And that was actually reflected in the timeline of INEC itself, our official Twitter account. So INEC had to now suspend any collation that has to do with Obingwa, asking for a review of what transpired there. That was why there was that suspension. And everyone's blood pressure in Abia, I must tell you, went very up. There was unease in the land. And it became an international issue. It wasn't longer a national issue. Everyone in the world, you know, started to focus on Abia electoral process in order to know what will actually be the outcome. And I tell you this, I am very proud of INEC, in this particular matter. They invited those who were involved in Obingwa, asked them to come to Abuja with all the materials.
The INEC, the
Yes,
officials,
yes,
coalition
they did,
officials,
the EOs. And they went through the process diligently from night till the following morning, telling you that if institutions in the country want to work, they'll work. And at the end, they came up with accurate result of what transpired in Obingwa. The accredited voters was in the neighborhood of 27,000. But the real vote, for PDP was 9,000 plus, and then Labour Party 3,000 plus, and APC less than 300 votes. And they were asked to go back and allowed that woman, Professor Oti, who has now become the cynosure of what public service ought to be in terms of being very upright, righteous, and straightforward, and very bold and courageous to do the right thing. Asked her to go ahead and announce the result. And that result was announced yesterday. And you can see the kind of jubilation. It has never happened in any state. Go and watch all the results that have been declared in all the states. Abia now has signposted that if you win election and you see the kind of joy, eruption of joy in the land, that is clearly an evidence that you win that election. And so it's not an issue of when you win an election and there is sadness all over the country and all over the land, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your victory. So Abia represents many things now in terms of politics, electoral process, and even rejoicing when election is won. We have now told the world that this is how, when a popular candidate emerges, this is the kind of joy that erupts all over all the local government. As at last night, I was still getting information from my village that by 2 a.m. people were still rejoicing in the land, eating and drinking and dancing and shooting all manner of things, honestly.
Well, let's hope that their celebration continues well into the administration of the governor-elect.
Beautiful.
But through much of the state elections, whenever there's a delay in the announcement of results, like the case of Abia and some others, for instance, Abians had to wait 2 to 3 days since Saturday before the results were declared yesterday. Whenever there is a delay as this, it fosters some form of distrust in the process.
That's right.
The belief is that something is happening in between that time. The fact that the PDP, the incumbent, has congratulated the winner, does it allay any fears that, anything untoward happened in between the time that Abians waited for the results?
I don't think that there was anything that was wrong that happened in between. The point is that, we have had situations like this when things happen, and then you trust the system, and the system end up, destroying that trust. And that's why nobody believes any public officer anymore. When things are done rightly, you must hold on to the institution for them to resolve issues. Just like what happened in Obingwa, where there was this issue of, results that you've considered very outrageous and sound so fictitious. And the institution said, look, let's review. Ordinarily, you should be able to place trust on that institution to carry out what you call diligent review and then come out with something that appears to be credible. But over time, we have had situations like this. And then when they come out with the outcome, the result sometimes can be very disappointing. So there has been this issue of lack of trust upon our institutions. And I believe that the time we begin to change the way of doing things and then muster confidence and then generate confidence from the people, I can assure you that there won't be any issue of suspicion. Suspicion arises because of previous instances where you trust institutions and they end up messing up your trust. So you don't even trust them anymore. That's why you see people even went to INEC and was telling INEC, look, we don't want to hear anything different from what we know. Because on ground already, people knew what was on ground. But the institution can come up in Nigeria and say, and do anything and say, go to court. And you go to court, and the court system will not even help you in the matter. So that's why this is lack of trust. But let's begin now to build a new country where people will have to place their trust on our institutions. It's very key, very important.
I find it, some might say that, well, the celebration in Abia doesn't beat theirs. I mean,
Yes.
some will say in Kano they saw the kind of celebration when NNPP won. I know it's not a competition of celebrations, but you know, it's a period. People just want to, you know, celebrate depending on how the results went. But two things quickly stick out. First, a lot of people will hear Professor Oti and they'll think, oh, wait a minute, the candidate that won is Alex Oti.
Okay.
The person who announced the result is Professor Oti. You have some background, just to be clear there on that.
Yeah, they are not in any way related. Professor Oti is a vice chancellor of a university in, I think, in Abia State there. She's from Afibo, or there, you know, from the north.
That's an Ebonyi.
Other Afibo or Hafia,
right,
in Abia State. Oti is from Ada from Mungwa, you know, or sometimes they say it's from Arochukwu, but whatever it is, they are not in any way related. And the woman has made that very clear. And Dr. Alex Oti also has made that very clear. They are not in any way related. There are many persons bearing Ubani. There are also people who bear, we have one Amarachi Ubani in here. And people keep on asking me, is she your wife? I said, no, we are not in any way, you know, any related and all that. So for the fact that tomorrow I am running for governor and then she becomes the INEC chairperson to probably announce my result does not mean that we are in any way related.
You still have to answer that question. You still have to answer the question there.
I will have to answer, but I'm trying to say it in advance that should Amarachi become the INEC chairman tomorrow and I'm announced as the governor-elect of Abia State, for God's sake, we are not in any way related.
But, you know, speak to the point you made, pardon me, Buki, about the reports that people were hearing that Obingwa was likely going to come in with over 100,000 votes. And that's really, I mean, when you think about it, especially with the Electoral Act, it's unfathomable. Even if it were possible, it does not make sense because you reference the number of registered voters, 27,000. So
no, accredited.
Accredited voters.
No, the number of registered voters in Obingwa is 150-something thousand.
Yeah, but the accredited voters, which beavers would use ultimately,
beautiful,
27,000. So really, I mean, even if there was going to be some sort of malfeasance or you know, hanky-panky, I mean, does it make sense? So is that on good authority that indeed 100,000, over 100,000 votes was going to come from Obingwa, or it was just conjecture?
Look at the testimony of the EU. I think they approached him, and they were talking about 80-something thousand votes because at that time they were sure that Oti has not garnered up to 80-something. Because in fact, that has been their previous practice. In 2015, that is what they did with Obingwa.
When you say they, who do you mean?
The PDP. You know, because I have been participating in election, you know, I'm going back to Abia to participate. I used to have a candidate that was actually propping up in order to be the governor of Abia State. So I'm a participant. So they happened in 2019. All of a sudden, others, you know, one candidate was doing very well. All of a sudden, we had 80-something thousand votes from Obingwa. And that made the entire difference.
So why was it not contested in court if indeed something wrong was going on?
The point is the technicality in electoral matters. The man that went to court fired out of time. You know, you have 21 days within which to do that. And if you don't even have a good lawyer who knows the technicalities in electoral law, you find it, you know, your matter will be messed up. So he got a lawyer who did not know how to file. Most of the things were thrown out. You know, and that was how we didn't go further in pursuing the legal option. So what I'm trying to say is that Obingwa has always been used as their last card. They wait for you to come with good results from all other local government. The next thing you hear 100 and something or 80-something thousand from Obingwa. And that makes the difference. And they be declared the winner. They've been doing it over time and been getting away with it. But beavers has changed all that. So when you now, we're asking the EU to write 80-something thousand, they must say from where? How do I get, from where? The beavers, they say you have to bypass the beavers. The point is that they let them go to court. Announce it, let them go to court, because they know that the court system also, you can use technicality and defeat substantial justice. And that's why we are talking about judiciary in this particular time that people are filing this action, that the judiciary must be very serious in trying to really do justice. That is when people will begin to fear doing the wrong thing. The moment our judiciary is living up to expectation, doing the right thing, dispensing justice without fear, without favor, equitably, Nigeria will be a country that all of us be proud of. Nobody will go and take your land. Knowing fully whether you go to court without any proof, the man will be asked to go to jail. So also with electoral malfeasance. So I'm saying now that the judiciary is the last hope, everyone is looking towards that direction. Please, may they dispense justice. May they dispense justice. Look at the issue and not issue of technicality. And they know They say go to court. Because at the end of the day, anything can come up in electoral matter, and let me not say.
So, Mr. Ubani, you were on ground in Abia during the state
Yes,
elections.
yes.
Let's talk about the voter turnout. The presidential candidate of the Labour Party won the votes, with about 325,000, I believe.
Yes.
But the cumulative votes, that all of the candidates garnered were not as much, So what happened this time around? Because comparatively in other states, there was a higher voter turnout.
It was the enthusiasm wasn't all that much, and then there were issues also in most of the polling units. When they know you are doing well in this polling unit, they will cause confusion, ballot snatching, and then the next thing that will happen is that particular polling unit result will be cancelled. I saw it happen, in many places in Abia. I was there, and so that's another thing we have to actually guard against. Now that we have beavers that have become a game changer, these guys are now trying to use other methods in order to rig election. If they know the area of your strength, they will come and cause either overvoting, they bypass the beavers, and by the time they count and then calculate, discover that the beavers has a different record of accredited voters and the number of those who have voted, they will now start shouting, overvoting, and before you know it, they'll cancel it. They cancel it in many places. It happened also ballot snatching. So one of the things I'm going to suggest, I don't like the idea of militarizing, electoral process, getting the army and all that. Maybe we should be able to have strong people that can guide polling unit. In my own polling unit, because I was a participant, I had my boys, from my own environment. I said, please, stay after voting. Let's secure this. Let's secure this particular vote. Or else, guys were milling around in order to cause some level of confusion and snatch and then cause confusion, and that's it. It happened in many places. We are receiving report, because I was the one covering my own local government. Every second I was being called, oh, there is confusion here, there is problem here, and all that. So this method of beavers, they have noticed that beavers is a game changer. So the next thing now to do is to ensure that any area of your strength, they will make sure that that vote does not count. They will cause confusion, and the person that is presiding will now cancel it. That is one thing, again, we have to now work against. What do we do? Is it with our electoral law, or is it with physical presence of those now that can man the polling unit in order to safeguard the votes of the people? These are things that are happening. It's more practical. I see you guys.
But there's a dilemma there,
yes.
Mr. Ubani, because right in the presence of security operatives, vote buying is happening, snatching of ballot boxes is happening, if we went by the reports of civil society organizations.
It's very unfortunate. You give a policeman a polling unit and he doesn't have anything, he doesn't have any gun. And, he's also afraid of his own life. When you see all these bad boys that come with things that can even hurt in order to come and, what are you going to do in this circumstance? A lone policeman in the polling unit. That is another thing I'm saying. But I wouldn't like issue of bringing military to come and man our polling unit. Maybe that may be the option. If it turns out that we cannot protect the votes, maybe we begin to employ the military. And I know that people like Femi Falana and the rest have said, no, we are over militarizing our electoral process. It's a civic responsibility. But what do we do? When people now, see what happened in Lagos.
When you have thugs on rampage.
When you have thugs all over. And a situation where you breed thugs all over for purposes of election, they breed them. And then immediately election is coming up, they unleash them on the people. So what do we do? Well, may we now probably begin to think of having the military? I know others will not like it. Some of this society will say, oh, please don't talk about that. But what do we do in this circumstance?
Well, big question there, Mr. Ubani. Questions about having non-state actors providing security for the elections. But let's head over to Abuja. Chamberlain.
Well, yeah, Mr. Ubani, I mean, listening to some of your suggestions, having been on ground, maybe we should have physical people standing there. That will be dangerous, because that could just easily transmute to political thugs, which is what lots of people want to address. They want that stamped out. So, but could you tell us then, what do you think, because we had a lot of suggestions in terms of what we need to do moving forward. What advantage do you think was there with the introduction of the processes that INEC introduced for these elections, if any?
What are the things that was good that INEC did in this election? Is it the question?
No, the advantages that the system brought about in terms of the methods, the technology that was introduced.
Oh, okay,
did it change anything whatsoever?
Yes. The beavers, the beavers was actually what sorted out most of the problem in terms of people trying to rig election. But that also includes the INEC officials being truthful enough to reflect the correct thing. Most times, the beavers, we have correct number of accredited voters, which is what the person that is presiding will do. They first of all show you the beavers. Oh, look at it, it's 00. Then they start the accreditation. Then when they finish, they tell you this is number of accredited people who have voted. Then they now begin to count. And the number of vote must correspond with accredited voters. So if it does that, everything, and then you write the result in a result sheet. And then make sure that agent is given a copy. The political party agent must be given a copy. You know what I did? I was the collation agent for my local government. So I called all the ward collation officer agents to ensure that they collect this result sheet from every polling unit agent and make it available to me. Because we are going to the local government for collation. I don't want a different result and different from what has happened at the polling unit. So by the time I was coming in, the INEC officials saw that I have all the polling unit results in all the local government. They were scared because there was intention to alter the result at the local government level. But seeing me with all the polling unit results in my hand, they know that it's going to be a trouble. And I went through all of them. If this particular war result is going to be, for me to sign, I will go through it of all the polling unit results. If it corresponds with what I have, I will sign. And I will go, that's how I did. And there was any problem whatsoever. That is the only way you can use. I am just telling all the politicians now, have a very good collation officer or agent, both at the local government and at the ward. With it, you can be able to hold them when you want to go and alter results.
Let me then ask.
Yes.
Now, there are several scenarios that played out. In fact, all through the time we spoke to INEC before the elections, there was never such phrase as beavers bypass. But we heard about beavers bypass when the elections eventually happened. Now, some of the matter that several people raised was this collation. They thought that collation was going to take a different shape, rather than what we used to have with the introduction of the beavers and things like that.
Correct.
So being on ground yourself, what would you suggest we do? Do we still stick with having to go to the regular collation center and do the collation, because that was a bone of contention in several areas? What can you suggest as to way forward?
Chamberlain, thank you for this very intelligent question. The civil society and stakeholders in the electoral process, fought for an amendment to the Electoral Act. And one of the major innovations of the Act was this issue of introduction of transmission of the result at the polling unit. Because the purpose is to reduce the level of human interference in the process. We know what happens by the time you finish at the polling unit. Before you get to the collection center, they will alter all the results. But when INEC that promised transmission, did not follow even their own internal guideline as enunciated in the presidential election, it gave room for people to now still think that, we are back to 2010 Electoral Act. We can use manual method and alter the result, bypassing the beavers. That was their thinking in this particular governorship election. Because of the fact that INEC messed up a bit in the presidential election, they did not transmit as promised. They now saw an opening. What happened? They saw an opening as, we can still alter results at the collation center. That is why you see the desperation. They were all caught unawares in the general election. That's why they saw some level of sanity in the, the result, especially with the Senate and that of House of Reps. But the presidential, there was no transmission. So these people saw, we can alter results still. So the normal thing is that after election has been concluded in a polling unit and result, sorted out, counted and announced, the next thing is written down and then transmitted immediately. So you don't even need to begin to struggle and follow, because if you go and alter it at the collection center, for God's sake, the result has already been transmitted. It's already in the system, so you can't alter anything. But this issue of, I didn't come with the right password, or there is no network, and most times they do it purposely. They tell you there is no network. They are doing it so that they can go and alter the result at the collection center. So it's like we are back to 2010 or 2003 electoral. So it is important we begin to emphasize the issue that technology has come in. Let us employ technology. Whenever you finish the electoral process at the polling unit, transmit immediately. So if anyone wants to go and alter at the collection center, you know it's already in the system. You can't alter anything. And then have your own copy. Have your copy of the result so that they can alter nothing. If they alter anything, you have a copy of it that has already been transmitted, to the system at the back end or IREV. So that is what I want to suggest. Let INEC live up to the billing. We spent 400 billion in this electoral process. But what we get in terms of output from INEC was not what we expected because of this issue of transmission. If INEC can improve on this issue of transmitting results at the polling unit, we won't have issue of people going to go and alter any result at anywhere, at any point, at the collection center. So we are back to the same system of trying to follow INEC to collection center. That was what happened in this election, which shouldn't have happened if INEC had stick to their guideline.
Okay, so I would like to ask you, Mr. Ubani, I think first, congratulations are in order to you and the people of Abia State. I'd like to find out from you whether electronic voting is something that you would support. Do you think that that will make a difference? Because some people are saying that, oh, the fact that we still have a physical side of things, people are still voting, using ballot papers, results are still being written on physical result sheets, and then taken as in the picture of that result sheet is what is now taken and transmitted. That's what is now giving people the, the temerity to try and alter results on physical sheets of papers. Do you think that electronic voting will help in any way?
Yes, Mark, but that's also another intelligent question. What we have started to do is deployment of technology in our electoral process, and we started with this issue of beavers now, and then transmission. We have seen that with beavers is a game changer. We must now begin to probably start maybe with a local government election with issue of electronic voting. Let's see how it goes. Because it is something that is worth exploring. We don't need any physical paper anymore. You come, you vote for your candidate, it goes. So first, somebody will not hack the system. Provided somebody will not hack the system, we have to probably have an technologist, those who are good in technology and computer. Make the system to be free from being hacked so that we can now start gradually with electronic voting. It will be also a game changer if we begin to look towards that direction of having electronic voting, no paper involvement. See, the less interference of the human factor in the electoral process, we guarantee the credibility. I'm saying it here because in MBA, we have exploited it, and we have seen it work where we do electronic voting. We go into the internet and vote, and then the results are being announced. In fact, sometimes you watch results, as it's, dropping and all that. We can also start it with national, But I said the way to start is maybe local government election first, with the level of education and technology and all that. Let's start with local government, then state, and then finally to the federal. But it's something that is worth exploring. Less involvement of human factor in our electoral process, we solve our problem. Let me tell you what I noticed. Because of human factor in our electoral process, I discovered that it can be compromised. The INEC officials will ask you, "Oga, what did you come for us? What did your political party provide for us?" It's not necessary for you to ask me that. The policeman that is also guiding will say, "What did you guys bring for us?" And I'm beginning to wonder, why are you asking me to give you something? Because we are there to be very impartial. If I give you something, would I induce you? So I have discovered that it is human factor that messes up even when we have the best of laws. Our electoral law is perfect, but the human beings, is the problem. I saw a lady who is an INEC official being slapped at my collection center. Why? Because she collected money, and she promised to alter the result for them, and she failed to do it. And she was given a hot slap, and I saw it in my collection center. So they still believe they can still maneuver this system. It's a human factor. So the less involvement of human factor in our electoral process, we guarantee credibility. So going through your suggestion, let's start gradually with electronic voting at the local government level, state level, see the perfection we can be able to attain, then finally we can bring it up. It's something that is worth exploring. Because the less involvement of human factor, the more credible the electoral process in Nigeria will be.
And I think that's a great way to land, really. I mean, seeing what happened in Abia State and the Southeast generally, Abia particularly under the PDP for 2 decades at the least. And
can I say something about, agenda for Dr. Alex Otti?
Yeah, just quickly.
He's a very great man, first-class economics graduate, and then has taken the Access Bank, former Diamond Bank to a level. I believe that he has plan in order to transform Abia. Transformative agenda is one to go. And then he has the best brain around him in order to turn Abia politics, Abia economy round. And I believe so much in him. And then let's do an integrative factor between all other governors in the southeastern region. With Alex now leading the role, everyone will want to, follow suit in making sure that we succeed as a region. Now,
how do you mean leading the role?
Yes,
there's Governor Soludo of Anambra State.
Soludo is also, yes, are you following me? Then I don't know who is emerging, who has emerged in Ebonyi State and in Enugu. This beautiful, all these people need to come together in order to run an integrative economy that will make the East the best region. Because when Okpara was remember the premier, he had the fastest growing economy in the southeastern region with only palm produce proceed. We can do it again in the southeast. So having this brain.
Are you optimistic, Mr. Ubani, that party difference will not?
No, party difference should not. It's about the southeast. It's about the southwest. It's about the north. All of them should be looking towards direction of running an integrative economy that can make Nigeria to be one of the best in the world. And having these guys who have succeeded in private enterprise coming into politics is the best thing that can happen to Nigeria, because they have managed men and resources, and we're able to be a success. They are now coming to public service in order to give their best. So let's have this factor in the mind that we must make sure that all of them must come together to make Southeast to be an example of what good governance is supposed to be. Abia has bad image. This man is going to clear that image by the grace of God and make Abia to be a sign-show in everything, both in governance, both in politics, both in arts and culture. And I'm looking forward to having the best governor being Alex Otti in future in this country.
Not forgetting that we have Senator Hope Uzodimma of
Imo okay, State. Fine, from Imo. That's
By the way, the Southeast right now, as it stands, is the most diverse in terms of politics. 2 APC, 1 PDP, 1 ABGA, and now 1 Labour Party.
But they're going to come together. They have to come together.
Which is what we wait to see in the coming days. But we'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Monday Ubani. What, you're a non-partisan politician now, or professional politician?
Professional politician. That's true. That's true. Thank you very much.
Non-partisan politician.
I mean, this is Dr. Ubani. We'd like to thank you so much for your time on the program this morning. Well, let's go on a quick break now. When we return, we'll have more for you. We're still expecting results from 2 states, and we'll be focusing on just one of them in just a moment. Stay with us. Just before we dash down to one of those states, let's talk about the electoral process some more, and also pay attention to some of those transactions, the online transactions, and some of the challenges we have faced. This morning we're joined in our Lagos studio by Mr. David Dada, who is the co-founder and president DTCoop.ng. He's an ICT consultant, smart contract developer, and information security professional. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program. Saying the information security professional just sticks out for a lot of people, because I remember IREV, beavers. This is what we've been talking about. One of the dailies had this story about cyber attacks on INEC technology, hitting 16.8 million. I don't know. A lot of people doubt that figure. A lot of people wonder, are they trying to talk about the visits to INEC's website? Are they talking about attacks as in real attacks? When you see those figures, remember that some figures were given previously by the Minister of Digital Economy. What do you make of it? 16.8 million attacks.
It's a bit unusual, and personally, I think I would doubt the figure because there is usually a cyber attack map, you know, globally. You can easily verify this. We want to know how many, visit was made, or what kind of tool were used to attack. All these things are digitized, and there are footprints. So we can easily trace, to know if such really happened. So if the minister is saying that, is probably privy to certain information that we are not privy to, but from the outside is almost unbelievable.
So then what figure would be realistic?
Well, it's difficult to say, but one would need to ask, who is interested in hacking our servers, our electoral servers, and who is really interested in the information there, and what are they hoping to get? Don't forget that INEC invested a lot into this, and I would be very surprised and disappointed if nothing was earmarked for, information security and, the protection of the server and all of that. And I can tell you for free that would be a major investment on their part, and I'm sure, very sure that that was done. So maybe attempts were made, but I doubt the volume or the numbers. Definitely attacks must have been,
Speaking of
carried
who's
out
interested, one of our resource persons earlier on sort of tied this interest to, the international community paying influencers, for propaganda purposes and to cast aspersions on Nigeria's electoral process. How much of this is reliable information? And if it is indeed reliable, what impact does it have on Nigeria's sovereignty, this degree of interest in our electoral process?
I think you need to understand that that is not peculiar to us. And if that is the case, then our servers will not be where they will be, trying to go to. They will stay on the social media where the electorates congregate. And that is how it was done even in the US. I mean, it's easy. As a matter of fact, with what we have today, you can predict based on what is happening on various platforms. I'm not talking about the government's systems right now. I'm talking about the public platforms. You can predict how an election will go based on what is happening online at any point in time. So if you can do that, it also means that you can influence how people vote. You can, and that is where influences and all those things comes up. So talking about how that relates to our sovereignty, we need to understand we now live in the digital space, and a lot of things that we're not used to will start happening. And so going forward, we need to start considering all of this in our electoral process. How does the social media influences, the voting pattern in various geographical locations? So the way it will influence in the north will be probably slightly different from the way it will influence in the south. The way it will influence certain age group will also be different. So these are things that we need, and anyone from anywhere in the world can influence. I mean, if they could carry that out against the US with all the infrastructure, with all the money, with all the knowledge and all of that, I don't think any country is immune to it. It doesn't speak to our sovereignty or against our sovereignty. It's more like a wake-up call that we're now fighting a different kind of war. We're now playing on a different turf, and we need to start considering some things that were never considered.
I think that's a reality now.
Absolutely.
I mean, the reports of possible Russian interference in U.S. elections.
Absolutely.
In fact, during the elections 2019 Nigeria, there was that report as well. So
Absolutely.
As I say, if you can't take the heat, maybe you should get out of the
Get out
kitchen.
of the
But that's the
kitchen.
reality. We need to cook. But I know you've, maybe try to troubleshoot the whole process, starting from the election we saw on 25th of February, then the one we just witnessed last week. And it's kind of like a hybrid. There's the electronic angle, the digital angle, and there's still the manual angle. And I wonder, what kind of improvements would you like to see? Having seen the process, the controversies that trailed it, so maybe some of the wins and the losses, what do you think we should actually focus on right now if we want to have it better the next time around?
I think we should go the whole hog and just go e-voting. Yeah, I mean, what is the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen that we're not experiencing already? I think the e-voting will actually curtail a lot of these SSAs and will make the electoral process a lot better than what it is right now. People talked about hacking. There are standalone EVMs, electronic voting machines, and there are those that you can connect to the internet. When you even talk about the internet, people think, so for instance, the US government is right there on the internet running their business. This internet started as a private network, remember. What we call the internet today was just a network used within maybe the military, then some other, before it started gaining popularity, and then it became a worldwide thing. Who says the INEC cannot create its own network to run e-voting, such that there are less interference from the rest of the world? We can have our own system, well secured, just for this purpose. People can register online to get the ability to vote. People can actually vote right from their houses. You can't have ballot boxes that anybody wants to snatch. And right there, in the proper use of the word, real time, you get your election results as they are made. Real time, not the real time that we're experiencing now.
But that also comes with a lot of...
No, this is not real time.
But you know, that also comes with a lot of distrust, especially from the electorate.
Yes.
Because it doesn't eliminate, the human element 100% as well. And people refer to the NBA experience, where they carried out the e-voting, but it also had its own challenges. So I wonder what you think about
within the cybersecurity value chain, your weakest link is the human element, those who are handling the system. All right. We can say for free now that within the last 1 month, during these elections, there are tech people that are a lot richer now. There are bankers that cashed out. There are police, security agents that are a lot richer. There are INEC officials who probably couldn't afford their kids' school fees, will be shipping them out of the country now to go to school because they've benefited immensely from the system.
Wrongly,
all right? Fraudulently. So, I mean, when it comes to executing cybersecurity or anything that has to do with tech, that human element is usually the weakest link. And people can exploit that, to their own benefit and to the detriment of the system. Until we're able to provide social security safety nets for people, that will continue to be a big issue in our process. And it is even a big issue right now, right, with or without the technology. So like I said earlier on, what is the worst that can happen that is not already happening? All we need to do is ensure that the system works and is well protected and make sure that the culprits are punished, all right? So that will serve as a deterrent to anyone who is trying to do something untoward within the system. So you can't completely eliminate that human angle, which is the weakest link within the cybersecurity system, but you can improve on it, and definitely it will improve on the system as we have it right now.
While we wait for e-voting, as you watch this process, the presidential and the state elections, what do you identify to be the weakest link in the transmission of results?
Let's look at the entire
chain.
With the introduction of this electronic systems and all of that, there are 3 areas where they introduced technology for this year's election. You have the registration, that was the first point. Then you have the beavers, and then you have the transmission of the election results. For me, the registration and the transmission didn't really meet up to expectation. Those were, flawed completely. The beavers worked creditably well, all right? And so if we're looking at areas of improvement, we should be looking at the registration and the transmission. Now for the transmission, for the life of me, I don't really understand what they were trying to achieve by snapping no form of verification before uploading, and then that is taken as, the result. Who verifies what is being posted?
Because we saw pictures of people.
Absolutely. I mean, someone just snapped herself and posted this as a result for a polling unit, and it went online, and that was taken as a result. So what are the validation processes before uploading? I'm not too sure they thought about that. And so you will still see polling unit result with TPEX, with all manner of alterations still uploaded and is taken as the valid result. Those aren't valid in any way. So who validates those things? Those are the errors that they need. If we have to maintain what we have right now, then they need to look seriously into the validation of the result that is uploaded. But I don't really know, like I said, for the life of me, what they are really trying to achieve when someone could come to the polling unit as a polling officer and tell you, we're not going to transmit these results. We'll take them to the collation center and then we can upload from there. So what happens between the polling unit and the collation center is not, you know, anybody's business.
And I think that stretches to the point I was going to make. If we're going to go the whole hog, the whole digital hog, don't you think you'll then monopolize control over the system such that it's only maybe a few set of people, either techies or people who understand the system that now have control of it? I mean, you talk about DNS, you talk about DMZs, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys talking about? And with the old process we had, everybody would stay there while they count the results. So, I mean, you have the voters, you have the agents, you have literally everybody seeing how they count it. They follow the results to the wards, they collate it, everybody sees it, they follow it to the local government. Yes, it is tedious, but at least everybody is a part of it, and it's democracy. So don't you see that danger? But when you start talking about demilitarized zones and having a separate network, you've lost 95% of the population.
So tech doesn't work that way. Okay. Tech doesn't give power to just a few set of people. Tech actually is the best form of democracy you can have.
But not everybody can go to the back end. I mean, things can be changed at the back end. So no, everybody doesn't have access to the back end.
So it depends on what kind of technology is being deployed. And for a serious event like, you know, an election of a country, then you need to start looking into technology that gives power to everybody that is involved. And there are different platforms you can use for that makes whatever is done immutable. You can't change it. You can't edit it. The moment you put it there, nothing can remove anything from it. Nothing can change it.
There's always that caveat with tech.
Yeah.
That, well, is 99%. Even systems, they say, well, it's not hackable, but, you know, there's that little chance of it
like
being
every
hackable.
other thing in
someone
life.
Created it, actually.
Like every other thing in life. There is absolutely nothing in life that is absolute. Okay? So you need to look at it from that perspective. But there are technologies that will give everyone involved the control and the ability to see, again, the word real time, what goes on.
I guess that's the reassurance that people need. If you insist that, you know, tech is more democratic,
absolutely,
even than what we have now, how democratic, how much power would it put in the hands of the electorate?
So look at it this way. Right now, we have technology deployed in almost every facet of our life. Look at JAMB registration, for instance. Look at your financial transactions, for instance. You are involved, except where you compromise the system by giving away information that you shouldn't, or someone on the other side compromises the system by also giving away information that they shouldn't. But the beauty of it is that you leave a digital trail in all of this that is traceable to the end point. So people can know what happened at any point in time. Again, giving validation to the democratic nature of technology. So if we really mean business when it comes to getting it right with our electoral process, I don't think, in my own opinion, there is any other way to go other than to go the old hog, deploying technology from registration to the result collation.
I mean, I have to bring in this point right now. So we try to go the whole hog, or we're going the whole hog with financial transactions.
Yes.
And, you know, these things are actually like two sides of a coin because they rely on technology. And from what we've seen, with the whole reliance, everybody literally trying to do a transfer, trying to use a POS, we've seen lots of heartbreaks, literally. In fact, some have seen even monies taken from their accounts. I don't know, maybe as a result of their details being exposed, or someone at the back end doing some funny things. So from the experience we've had with this whole transition to cashless economy, are we really ready for the full hog? And I'd like you to speak both on the side of what we've seen in the cashless transaction period and the election. Are we really ready for that?
If there is anything we've done right in the last 20 to 23 years, we've done almost everything right with our fintech space. As of 2022, 80% of digital banking activities happened between Nigeria and South Africa, in the whole of Africa. 80% of the digital banking transaction in Africa happened between Nigeria and South Africa. And for the past 6-7 years, year on year, we've been improving on the infrastructure and financial technology, in Nigeria. In the whole world, I think we're top 6, one of the top 6 countries when it comes to financial technology and everything in between that space. So we've done very well. From the very first time the ATM was installed in 1989 in Nigeria, that was the first time we did anything in electronic banking, till today that we now have full digital banks, it's been a lot of massive improvement. And again, the COVID-19 pandemic pushed everybody to that space to have their transaction done there. But taking, the entire banking operations from what we used to know off to the digital space, I think it's something that no country will be fully prepared for. And Nigeria trying to, blaze a trail in that regard, I'm not too surprised at what we're seeing, because it's a lot of pressure that will be put on all our infrastructure within that value chain. You won't expect things to run smoothly at the beginning. So it's rough, it's tough right now, everybody's feeling the pinch. I did a transaction yesterday, it's supposed to be real time, but it didn't happen. I didn't get my money until about 24 hours later.
That's disrespectful for someone like you. Doesn't the technology know who you are?
I'm surprised. And I mean, I did the transfer, I was expecting it in 2-3 minutes, and I was under pressure for almost 24 hours because I didn't even know where the money was hanging until I started tracing it, which speaks to the point that me, from my end, I can actually see what happened and be able to determine what to do. And when I saw, okay, the money left here, it didn't get here, so it must be here.
Yeah.
All right, so what do I do from this point to ensure that it gets to destination? And then I was able to maybe call the customer care, and they confirmed what I've seen, and it's okay, don't worry, in another 24 hours latest, it will happen. And about 3-4 hours after that call, I got the alert. So you see, it's easier to deal with that than me having to go to the banking hall, then bring out my passbook and start saying, okay, where did this one go, where did that one, okay, go to so-so branch. I could sit in the comfort of my room and do all of that, as against going to the banking hall. So yes, there are issues with, switching over from manual banking to digital banking, but I tell you, it's just a teething problem. It will go away, and we'll be better off for it.
We need to dig deeper into this, really, because this is at the heart of what a lot of Nigerians are facing. But we're due for a break. Our colleagues in Abuja also have questions for you, but that's in a moment. Stay with us, everyone. This is something you do not want to miss. We'll be back in a moment. So with Mr. David Dada, we're talking election and financial tech, which is arguably top on the talking point for Nigerians right now. Let's head over to Abuja now. Makwe.
Well, thank you very much, Kayode. Very interesting conversation you've been having with Mr. Dada there. And I know we're already talking about money, but I'd like to take you back to the electoral process. We'll come and talk about money in just a moment. Not everybody has the privilege to know where their money is hanging when it is that they do a transaction. And I'm sure that maybe you would share a tip with us or two on how to know where it is hanging. But let's talk about politics for a moment. And you've talked about how technology was introduced in these elections, from registration even up to transmission, and you faulted the areas where it worked well and the areas where it didn't quite perform optimally. But let me ask you, because one of the things that we have taken up with INEC is the issue of why it is that people cannot vote anywhere. If you've been registered, for instance, in Lagos and you now live in Abuja, why is it that you just can't, you can't vote? And then they raise the issue of delineation.
Will then monopolize control over the system, such that it's only maybe a few set of people, either techies of people who understand the system that now have control of it. I mean, you talk about DNS, you talk about DMZs, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys talking about? And with the old process we had, everybody would stay there while they count the results. So, I mean, you have the voters, you have the agents, you have literally everybody seeing how they count it. They follow the results to the wards, they collate it, everybody sees it, they follow it to the local government. Yes, it is tedious, but at least everybody is a part of it, and it's democracy. So don't you see that danger? But when you start talking about demilitarized zones and having a separate network, you've lost 95% of the population.
So tech doesn't work that way. Okay. Tech doesn't give power to just a few set of people. Tech actually is the best form of democracy you can have.
But not everybody can go to the back end. I mean, things can be changed at the back end. So no, everybody doesn't have access to the back end.
So it depends on what kind of technology is being deployed. And for a serious event like, you know, an election of a country, then you need to start looking into technology that gives power to everybody that is involved. And there are different platforms you can use for that makes whatever is done immutable. You can't change it. You can't edit it. The moment you put it there, nothing can remove anything from it. Nothing can change it.
There's always that caveat with tech.
Yeah.
That, well, is 99%. Even systems, they say, well, it's not hackable, but, you know, there's that little chance of it
like
being
every
hackable.
other thing
because
in
someone
life.
created it, actually.
Like every other thing in life. There is absolutely nothing in life that is absolute. Okay? So you need to look at it from that perspective. But there are technologies that will give everyone involved the control and the ability to see, again, the word real time, what goes on.
I guess that's the reassurance that people need. If you insist that, you know, tech is more democratic,
absolutely,
even than what we have now, how democratic, how much power would it put in the hands of the electorate?
So look at it this way. Right now, we have technology deployed in almost every facet of our life. Look at JAM registration, for instance. Look at your financial transactions, for instance. You are involved, except where you compromise the system by giving away information that you shouldn't, or someone on the other side compromises the system by also giving away information that they shouldn't. But the beauty of it is that you leave a digital trail in all of this that is traceable to the end point. So people can know what happened at any point in time. Again, giving validation to the democratic nature of technology. So if we really mean business when it comes to getting it right with our electoral process, I don't think, in my own opinion, there is any other way to go other than to go the old hog, deploying technology from registration to the result collation.
I mean, I have to bring in this point right now. So we try to go the whole hog, or we're going the whole hog with financial transactions.
Yes.
And, you know, these things are actually like two sides of a coin because they rely on technology. And from what we've seen, with the whole reliance, everybody literally trying to do a transfer, trying to use a POS, we've seen lots of heartbreaks, literally. In fact, some have seen even monies taken from their accounts. I don't know, maybe as a result of their details being exposed, or someone at the back end doing some funny things. So from the experience we've had with this whole transition to cashless economy, are we really ready for the full hog? And I'd like you to speak both on the side of what we've seen in the cashless transaction period and the election. Are we really ready for that?
If there is anything we've done right in the last 20 to 23 years, we've done almost everything right with our fintech space. As of 2022, 80% of digital banking activities happened between Nigeria and South Africa, in the whole of Africa. 80% of the digital banking transaction in Africa happened between Nigeria and South Africa. And for the past 6-7 years, year on year, we've been improving on the infrastructure and financial technology, you know, in Nigeria. In the whole world, I think we're top 6, one of the top 6 countries when it comes to financial technology and everything in between that space. So we've done very well. From the very first time the ATM was installed in 1989 in Nigeria, that was the first time we did anything in electronic banking, till today that we now have full digital banks, it's been a lot of massive improvement. And again, the COVID-19 pandemic pushed everybody to that space to have their transaction done there. But taking, you know, the entire banking operations from what we used to know off to the digital space, I think it's something that no country will be fully prepared for. And Nigeria trying to, blaze a trail in that regard, I'm not too surprised at what we're seeing, because there's a lot of pressure that will be put on all our infrastructure within that value chain. You won't expect things to run smoothly at the beginning. So it's rough, it's tough right now, everybody's feeling the pinch. I did a transaction yesterday, it's supposed to be real time, but it didn't happen. I didn't get my money until about 24 hours later.
That's disrespectful for someone like you. Doesn't the technology know who you are?
I'm surprised. And I mean, I did a transfer, I was expecting it in 2-3 minutes, and I was under pressure for almost 24 hours because I didn't even know where the money was hanging until I started tracing it, which speaks to the point that me, from my end, I can actually see what happened and be able to determine what to do. And when I saw, okay, the money left here, it didn't get here, so it must be here.
Yeah.
All right, so what do I do from this point to ensure that it gets to destination? And then I was able to maybe call the customer care, and they confirmed what I've seen, and it's okay, don't worry, in another 24 hours latest, it will happen. And about 3-4 hours after that call, I got the alert. So you see, it's easier to deal with that than me having to go to the banking hall, then bring out my passbook and start saying, okay, where did this one go, where did that one, okay, go to so-so branch. I could sit in the comfort of my room and do all of that, as against going to the banking hall. So yes, there are issues with, switching over from manual banking to digital banking, but I tell you, it's just a teething problem. It will go away, and we'll be better off for it.
We need to dig deeper into this, really, because this is at the heart of what a lot of Nigerians are facing. But we're due for a break. Our colleagues in Abuja also have questions for you, but that's in a moment. Stay with us, everyone. This is something you do not want to miss. We'll be back in a moment. So with Mr. David Dada, we're talking election and financial tech, which is arguably top on the talking point for Nigerians right now. Let's head over to Abuja now. Makwe.
Well, thank you very much, Kayode. Very interesting conversation you've been having with Mr. Dada there. And I know we're already talking about money, but I'd like to take you back to the electoral process. We'll come and talk about money in just a moment. Not everybody has the privilege to know where their money is hanging when it is that they do a transaction. And I'm sure that maybe you would share a tip with us or two on how to know where it is hanging. But let's talk about politics for a moment. And you've talked about how technology was introduced in these elections, from registration even up to transmission, and you faulted the areas where it worked well and the areas where it didn't quite perform optimally. But let me ask you, because one of the things that we have taken up with INEC is the issue of why it is that people cannot vote anywhere. If you've been registered, for instance, in Lagos and you now live in Abuja, why is it that you just can't, you can't vote? And then they raise the issue of delineation, how, you have to be in a certain location and how, polling units are carved out, et cetera, et cetera. How do you think that technology can rise above this, I don't want to say it's a political divide, but this political issue of delineation, that it's only people who are resident in a particular place at a particular time that can determine how the politics of that place goes?
Thank you, Makwe. I think there is little knowledge about technology amongst those who are implementing our electoral process. One good thing about technology is that it breaks down the distance and time barrier. So within the digital space, there is no such thing as distance or time barrier. And if we have decided to employ technology in our electoral system, then we need to begin to collapse those issues around, oh, so because you are here and therefore you have to vote here. So I'm here in Lagos and maybe registration is going on, I register here. So when it's time for me to vote, I have to come from wherever, even if I'm outside the country, to come in here and vote. It doesn't make sense to me. Why can't I register and from anywhere and still be able to vote from anywhere as long as I am validated or verified as a bona fide voter in Nigeria? So we need to begin to ask questions around the kind of laws that guides what we do and how we do them, vis-a-vis the realities of the 21st century and the deployment of technology in our electoral processes. For me, if getting people, validating people as a Nigerian and allowing them to vote is the end game, then their location within the country should not be an issue. If I am able to register in Kano and I happen to find myself in Abuja during election, as long as my record is validated and I'm a bona fide voter in Nigeria, I should be able to vote anywhere. So it speaks to probably the lack of knowledge of how to implement technology in, in our electoral process in the 21st century.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see how that is explored going forward, if it's something that we want to, because I also know that people who live in diaspora have been very interested in our elections and, also want to be, participants. They want to be able to vote and have a say in what happens in their home country. Do you think that this is something that is possible in the nearest future?
There are countries already doing this. So we need to ask, how do they do it? How are they able to implement this? There are countries bigger than Nigeria with more complicated, geography, with more complicated numbers of people, population, and all of that diversity. But they are able to allow their citizens, wherever they are in the world, to vote. So probably some of them will be able to vote a lot earlier than the rest of us, or some of them will be able to vote later than the rest of us. Again, as long as they're able to validate them as eligible Nigerian voters, no matter where they find themselves, they should be able to vote. But we have to look at the laws that will enable them to do that. We have to look at the peculiarities of our country to be able to do that. But this is possible, and this is something that we should be looking at. I love this quote by William Shakespeare. He said, "There's a tide in the affairs of men where taking at the flood leads to fortune. And at the end of that, he said we need to take this wave, when it serves, otherwise we lose our ventures." Nigeria had a very big opportunity to leap into the future as it relates to our electoral processes during this last, set of elections. But we missed this opportunity because of the desperation of politicians across board. This is not peculiar to any party. It was indeed across board. And now I believe we're years backwards from where we were before this election cycle. We really need to look inwards, look into our electoral laws, look into how we intend to deploy technology in making sure we get our desire. And for me, for the next 4 years or thereabout, we need to really sit down and look at things critically and decide whether we really want to deploy technology or we just want to dance around things in fear and trepidation of the worst case scenario, or we want to be bold enough to take those bold steps forward and say, we want to implement technology and we have to implement technology to make these things work. And guess what? By 2027, technology will be a lot more advanced than where we are now, and I will be very surprised if things will be easier to do manually for us rather than doing them technologically. And so we need to start planning and preparing, looking into our laws, looking into our political will to make this happen, because this is very key. It's not just about the available technology or the appropriate technology, but we also need to speak to the political will of those in charge, whether or not they are actually ready to make a change using technology.
Indeed, political will is key. But let me take you now and let's talk about the money a bit. And this is not just the money, I mean, in terms of the monetary system, but also in terms of the cash that people have at hand. You know, in terms of how poverty is also a key issue when we talk about technology. In places that are rural and in places where, you know, yeah, poverty is rife, the fact that people will be able to get access or key into the kind of technology that should, you know, move them forward is also an issue. Take, for instance, the issue of phones. People talk about how in rural communities, people might not even be able to have the right devices to be able to participate in banking transactions, etc. How do you think that this, this can be helped or this can be corrected so that people who are even in communities considered very rural or even where poverty is an issue, a very big issue, can also be carried along even as the entire country is trying to move in this cashless transaction world?
In this regard, with looking at innovations, I mean, if you go to Kenya, M-Pesa is all over the place in Kenya, and you can do your digital transactions on your mobile phone. It doesn't have to be a smartphone, any phone for that matter, you know, can do a financial transaction from anywhere in Kenya. So if we look deeply into our own peculiarities and we liberalize the fintech space a little bit more, I'm sure there will be a lot of innovation that can make that happen. But again, we need to understand the purpose and the drive for this from the point of CBN. The whole idea is not to actually digitize. Well, the process will help in digitizing, you know, financial transaction. But I think the major thing that CBN wanted to achieve, going by what they said, was to reduce the amount of cash in circulation. So for those people who are unbanked, for those people who do not have access to technologies right now, you know, they should be able to have access to cash to be able to solve whatever issues they have in their location, while those in the city centers and those in the urban areas can now rely heavily on digital transaction for their financial transactions. So for me, I think it's all about innovation. It's also about the goals of the central bank. What do they really want to achieve? How do they intend to bring all the unbanked into, you know, the banking system and ensure that they are able to mop up excess liquidity that they've had, you know, outside the banking system back into the system and ensure that they're able to control the economy and able to have a handle on how the monetary policy and all that pans out eventually. So talking about how people in the rural area, the poor, people with lack of access to technology can be involved, it's all about innovation. And I'm sure we're not bereft of ideas in the fintech space in Nigeria. This is a fertile ground for ideas and innovations. And if the government liberalizes the space a little bit more for fintech, you know, for the fintech innovators, I'm sure a lot of solutions will come that will make M-Pesa of Kenya a child's play.
Well, I do know that a number of banks have been coming up with with some solutions. I mean, we've seen how banks now have POS points in different places, even in places like Abuja that you think, oh, it's a city and, you know, it should have sufficient number of banks. If you go to, will I say, the outskirts of the main city, very rarely would you see banks, or at least even, you know, certain kinds of banks. How much more in rural areas? Why do you think that the POS, the POS people haven't exactly been as successful as it ought to be, or as we hope that it will be, in terms of bringing the unbanked into the banking sector?
No, I think to a large extent they have helped the system a little bit, and they've increased the financial inclusion net and brought in some people into that service. But again, I was telling someone not too long ago that Nigerians who are 10 years and below today, by the time they're 18, they may never know what the four walls of a banking hall will look like, because by then financial transactions will be fully digital and it will be carried out on mobile devices. Now, if we look into what the POS guys have done, they've made sure that the visit, the trips to the banks has reduced considerably. Of course, it will come at a cost to the customers, but it's something that has helped the system, and that has really brought in a lot of people into this, because now you can send money, receive money using the POS and all of that. So to a large extent, I think the POS has really helped in bringing people into, the financial inclusion space. But then, again, we can innovate around that and improve on that to ensure that the results and the kind of experience we're having is improved and a lot better than what it is. But for me, I think the POS has really helped in bringing people within the banking space.
About the government liberalizing the fintech space or world a little further, what specifically would you want to see?
Well, number one, let's give more incentives to investors who want to invest in the infrastructure that will enable or power the fintech space. Also encourage innovation. We have tremendous talent base in Nigeria that can really turn things around. If we are doing what we have right now, we are able to achieve the kind of result we're achieving with what we have right now, imagine what it would look like if there are more incentives, given to the fintech innovators to do a lot more, especially now that we are going into e-Naira, we are going into all forms of e-transactions and all of that. They should listen to the pulse of the people that play within the field and ask what more can the government do to liberalize the space and ensure that innovation is stimulated within the space. So for me, I think enabling investors to come in to invest in the area of infrastructure, encourage more innovation within the fintech developers or the fintech space, those will really help in creating better results for us as we have right now.
I'm talking about the traditional banking, because this CBN's policy, the cashless policy, showed a lot of banks out how the capacity was really low. They kept on saying, some of them, that the policy took them unawares, and so it was hellish for lots of customers. What do you think is the missing link to ensure that the banking sector is a lot safer and people can have a lot more confidence in the banks?
I think somewhere along the line, politics came into the implementation of this policy, and that made it difficult for the players to run with it smoothly. And so in implementing something like this, you need to take into consideration timing. You need to also take into consideration the value chain, those who are involved and how they are, communicated with, the line of communication between them, and how they're carried along in implementing the process. I think all of that, was not properly done in implementing this. I mean, it's shocking to hear banks say they were caught unawares. I mean, if banks are caught unawares, then who was really in the know of what is being implemented? Because how do you implement this without the banks? So I think politics came into play, and that messed up the process. As laudable as the idea is, as laudable as the policy is, there was a lot more that could be done around communication, around ensuring that the people who implement these are properly carried along and they understand the vision and what the CBN intended to achieve by this policy. And so I think it's all about managing the process. In this case, I don't think it was well managed.
I hear lots of people say that even though, yes, we do have a lot of talent in this country, but we get to see a lot of migration out of the country for greener pastures, as they say. Talk about our academic institutions now. Are we even doing enough or near enough to ensure we have the base, the platform to produce a lot more of talents, such as yours that can compete globally? And what are we not doing right?
So again, you need to consider we live in a world where barrier, distance, and all of that has been broken. So even when our own educational institutions are not at par with the realities of the 21st century, I was shocked to hear that, to learn that what we studied in school back then, there was a course around COBOL, Fortran, and all of that. Basic stuff that we did in year one, they are still being taught today in our universities to computer science students. And I'm like, these were software that were used, you know, before we were born, and nobody is even using them anymore. But, you know, students don't go to our universities to go and learn how to code. They actually learn all of this from the Ivy League colleges online. They go online and get to, so as bad as the educational systems has become, luckily we have something called the internet that has opened up the space for anyone from anywhere, to learn the skills for now and be able to implement. And that speaks to why we have a large pool of talent in Nigeria. I have a 19-year-old son that was just employed recently by an American firm to work for them. And the pay, I told him, I said, before I could earn this amount of money, it took me almost 19 years of hard labor. But here you are, still in school, you're earning more than your father. What made that happen? The internet. All right, he learned everything. He's doing theater arts in the university, but he's learning how to code and do all sort of, you know, front end, back end, online. So it wasn't dependent on what the school was teaching him. It was dependent on the power of the internet and the information he could access. And you can imagine how many talents like that are being built through the use of the internet by acquiring this knowledge. And we're talking about serious education. We're not just talking about somebody going to YouTube to learn, which is good, but we're talking about a structured learning system that impacts knowledge and builds skills in people. And we have millions of youth like that that are being developed, you know, through this means. So no matter how many people live, do you know how many tech people leave India on a daily basis? But that has not depleted the capacity of India to respond to the tech needs of the world, because India is more like the go-to place when you need, you know, tech skills. It hasn't depleted that base. And the same thing is emerging in Nigeria right now. We keep churning out skills day after day. I meet them on a daily basis. We have pools of talents that I'm not too sure we can deplete in the nearest future. So there's no fear about people leaving the country. The more they leave, the more we create within the system. But then we shouldn't allow the best of the best from us to be taken away from us by other countries and develop other economies. We should be able to do something to retain them here and encourage them to stay here, especially if they're able to work here and earn foreign currency. Imagine if you have like 5-10 million of them earning in hard currencies within our own system. Imagine what that would do to our naira. So these are areas that government should begin to look into. How can government encourage people to acquire these skills from these Ivy League colleges, develop this talent locally, and ensure they stay to use these skills to develop our own economy, work for other people? There should be a government agency probably looking into this or set up for this purpose to retain the talents that we're building on a regular basis and deploy them locally, even when they earn internationally.
You know, there are just so many areas to look at for this. But let me bring you back to election issues. And we hear the politicians say, oh, no, it's not too safe. We can't go full electronic voting because they're afraid that it could be hacked. Anything can happen. It just tells you where they are, you know, their mindset, where they are at the moment. So when you say the solution is go full electronic, first tell us, do we have the infrastructure? Because the same people, some of them former members of the commission, think otherwise, that we do not. And giving us your perspective, now if we don't, what do we do? Do we have ethical hackers who we can trust to say, okay, look, whatever the fears of the people are, this is something we can do?
for those who are expressing fears, for the politicians that are expressing fears, they're just being mischievous. They're not being realistic, because this same set of politicians have their monies in the banks in Nigeria and all over the place, and they're transacting businesses online with their with their hard-earned money and all of that. So if they could trust the banks, the technologies that the banks are using, to keep their money and make the transactions, why is it so difficult to also trust the same technology, for our electoral processes? So I don't think that is that's a valid point. I can remember the second thing you raised, Chamberlain.
Do we have the capacity? Do we have ethical hackers so that when all else fails, or if any of those fears can be addressed by those category of people?
When I hear how much was budgeted for this election, I think it was 305 billion naira that was approved.
Thereabout.
All right. Sorry?
Yes, thereabout.
Okay, for this election. So I had to go check how much did it cost the U.S. to send rockets to space? How much did it cost them, to launch the spacecraft, and then compare that to how much we're spending on our elections? Talking about infrastructure, we have what it takes to provide the infrastructure, to create the infrastructure. I mean, if we deploy, look, for whatever it's worth, half of this money, if we dedicate it to the entire process of electronic voting, from A to Z, from alpha to the end, I mean, we will still have something to return to the CBN at the end of the day. So I think for me, it's a form of misplaced priority, a lot of fraud in the system, a lot of lack of knowledge, and so on and so forth. If we could dedicate 305 billion naira to this process, and this is what we get, I bet you we can create the infrastructure with half of that finance or money, and ensure we deliver a credible election that anybody will be able to thump their chest and say, yes, we did this and we did it right. All we need to do is just look inwards. So talking about infrastructure, talking about ethical hackers, we have enough people trained to ensure that. I happen to be an information security expert myself, and I've been doing this for quite a while. And we mingle. We have, places we meet. We know what goes on within the system. Some of the best ethical hackers you can get in the world are residing here in Nigeria. Some of the best. Now, let's not even go into the field of those who are using this skill for, fraudulent things that the country can look into and see how they can, refocus that energy into something more productive. So when it comes to ethical hacking, the skills, how to protect our infrastructure, how to create a structure that works, how to create the infrastructure that works, we have the money, we have the skills, but we lack the political will to make it happen. And until that is in place, I'm not too sure we'll get anywhere with this.
Oh, I mean, we can go on with this conversation. It's a very interesting one because it touches at the very heart of two issues that have been affecting Nigerians the past 3 months. INEC actually had to ask for an extra 50 billion naira, so eventually it was 355 billion naira for this election. But, thinking about the cost of electronic, I was, doing some research about how much just one EVM would cost as an electronic voting machine. And, some will quote as much as even $5,000. And I'm thinking if we're going to have one for each polling unit, the cost I came up to was, I think, almost 600 billion naira. I need to do that again. So that's almost, except we'll not have it for each polling unit.
You're buying it, the prices you're getting is for those who are buying it off the shelf.
Okay.
For an election process, you have to do, original equipment manufacturing deal.
Wouldn't that be even more expensive? Because you have to fit our own peculiarity. Don't forget power issues. Maybe it has to have extra power.
Look,
packs.
What exactly is inside an EVM? What exactly do you have in there? I looked at the beavers. It's just an Android tablet.
So we can manufacture in Nigeria?
Absolutely. Look at the beavers. It's just an Android tablet, for crying out loud.
But do we have the technical know-how to manufacture in Nigeria?
We do. Absolutely we do. What we need to look, we have plants in Nigeria manufacturing or creating, or somebody will say assembling, laptops. But we also have those who can actually, there is nothing you want to manufacture that you have to do it, for every component within the system that you have to create yourself. I mean, even the US, putting a plane together, they get from China, from everywhere to make sure they come up with an aircraft. So if we're building an EVM, we won't be buying it at $5,000 for one. We can create that, drive down the cost of manufacturing.
For a moment, I was actually daydreaming and just imagining going to the, to the polling unit, and you vote and you get home and you see the results for every
Do you
Nigerian.
have to go to
like
the
you do
polling
the count?
unit?
Oh, I mean, I'm using polling unit as at least maybe the best for people. You can vote from home.
Yeah.
I don't know about the integrity of that, but the point is, you go to vote, and just like you see in Kahoot, you see the results in just a few seconds. But, lots of points raised. And I also wanted to, I don't know if it's some sort of proposal, to have the tech community come up with a proposal. I mean, tell the government that we are able to undertake this. I don't know if it's something...
You'll be shocked at how many papers have been sent to the government on this election.
Are you privy to some of them?
Absolutely.
And what kind of response did you get?
Lukewarmness. I mean, indifference, really. They're not just interested in this. And that begs the question, okay, what exactly are we trying to achieve? They're not interested.
We have to let you go right now because of time, but clearly this is an ongoing conversation, and it's quite interesting the insights you have given. But we'd like to thank you so much for your time on the program this morning. I'm guessing we'll have you soon. We've been speaking with Mr. David Dada, the co-founder and president of DT-Coop.ng. Coop, by the way, is a cooperative. Yeah. You have some very interesting packages. He's an ICT consultant, smart contract developer, and also an information security professional. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's take your mails. That's the beauty of technology, right? You can send in your mails and we'll get them in real time.
And we can actually talk to, you can talk to us. Yeah.
Okay, so you want to go first with this one?
Okay, so let's start with Adeshodun Akindele. And he or she says, I learned yesterday that 80% of the eggs produced in the farms between February and now were not sold because of inaccessibility to cash by consumers. Wow.
I mean, that's something we also need to, look into. Just how much have we lost? Let's verify all of this and see what we can do, really, because it's sad to see reports like this. This mail is from Fajabi Olusegun saying a full-fledged electronic armored voting system, like the armored you put there, which comprises of armored protecting polling units is what Nigeria needs. It is inhumane to suggest that people should use body armor to protect their votes. Before we achieve this, Nigeria needs a unique electronic bona fide citizens identification systems, of which the NIN, National Identity Systems, can be developed into. In Nigeria, we have great minds and brilliant heads with the right technology skills. Beautiful there.
Well, this is from Ikenam Bellu. He says, what about CCTV on polling units? What about backup in form of a private citizen independent electoral body? What about state assembly enacting laws that uniquely meet safety and procedure standards that is peculiar to the polity using the regulator's guidelines?
Okay. Well, I know a number of states can take that up as well. This one is from Joseph Oludari. Says the introduction of beavers is now accompanied by two major challenges: voter suppression and ballot destruction. A quick way out of this while approaching the next election is to invest massively in our security personnel in terms of number and equipment. We need to have minimum of 5 armed security personnel comprising the police, civil defense, and the army in each of the 176,974 polling units. The success recorded while addressing our internal security will always be put to test during elections. As a matter of necessity, if curbing the two major aforementioned challenges to beavers deployment is important to us, we must double the size of the police and civil defense, if not more. It's important to establish deterrence to the orchestrators of electoral violence. A few more tweets right there. And we still take them. Yeah.
I believe we can take them from here. This is from Ikenna Mbelu, and he says, what about backup in form of a private citizen independent electoral body? What about State Assembly enacting laws that uniquely meet safety and procedure standards that is peculiar to their polling unit using the regulator's guidelines?
So that's a mail that I was just taking. I think the way you're trying to take is Law Alpha Cross. About the beavers being a game changer, and those who made it via the system should be grateful to INEC, and for that wonderful introduction, in particular the Abia State Governor-elect. So that's the tweet from Law Alpha Cross. A couple of more. Henry
Do we have
Awowu.
time to take Henry Awowu?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Henry Awowu, here's your mail or your tweet. AI and technology cannot cure inclinations to subverting due process, nor depravity of minds and inordinate desires. Solution is demand-driven, result-oriented mass education that eliminates parochialism and insisting on doing things rightly from the first step.
Well, there you go. A look at all of the messages sent in. Guys.
Yes, indeed. Many thanks to all of you for sending in your messages. We do appreciate that. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain, so have a good day.
Indeed. Thank you for watching. I'm Malwell Yusuf. Goodbye.
I'm Kayode Okikule.
And Bukola Koka. Thank you for watching.